It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. And I want to say that how it came about that Eleanor McMahon was invited here. I do a podcast called Bike Sense, shameless plug here. And I did a podcast with Eleanor. I thought, wow, we've got to get her to the conference. Eleanor is the founder of the Share the Road Coalition on Ontario. I'm not going to go through her whole biography because I know she's going to touch on some of these things in her talk. She's a former Ontario cabinet minister. She has a personal relationship to cycling safety, and she is a force of nature, I'm going to say. Eleanor, she's my new mentor. She knows what has to be done to get things done, and she sets a high bar for reaching to the power brokers and decision makers, which is what we all, I think, have to strive to do. Well, she'll explain why and how. But I get a lot of, already just driving in from the airport with her, I'm all pumped up and full of new ideas. So, Eleanor, take it away.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Peter. That's very generous. I want to thank Peter and Ruth and the members of the board, and I want to thank all of you for coming. I'd like to ask for a round of applause for everybody who had a hand in organizing this conference. These are really tough to do. Yeah. Most of these people have full-time jobs. This work is off the side of their desk, and so, thank you. It's important work that you're doing, and it's really inspiring. I'm really humbled to be here. I want to thank Peter for inviting me. I jokingly said to him yesterday, I hope you're not going to regret it. And he's very kind and generous with me, but inviting me here to share a story of what we've done in Ontario with you is humbling. Just on reflection, as I was thinking about my talk today, I've realized that this isn't just a story about how we build a coalition of support in Ontario, how we mobilized, how we changed public policy and legislation, how we worked with, and thank you for the Ministry of Transportation officials who are here. As a former minister in the Ontario government, I treasure the relationship that I had with officials that I still have, and that your work is really important, and we applaud you for being here, and we thank you as well. It's important that you're here. But this is a very deeply personal story for me. And it's been hard over the years, and it still remains challenging. Peter talked about my enthusiasm, and I think, my husband was killed on his bike in 2006. He was a police officer with the Ontario Provincial Police, and he was killed by a careless driver who was later convicted and charged, who had 5 convictions for driving under suspension, 4 convictions for driving with no license, $15,000 in unpaid fines. And 2 months after he killed my husband, he hit someone else. So the tragic circumstances of that sort of led us and inspired us and still inspire us to continue to make progress because it's so important. And I think at the heart of all of this is work that you care about too. And I just want to say that I honor what you're doing. If any of this is helpful to you, then that's wonderful. Mission accomplished from my perspective. I'm going to share with you a menu of opportunities today. It's going to feel a little overwhelming. And I have to say, I was at the Global Cycling Conference in Gdansk, Poland this summer. I was invited by the European Cyclist Federation to speak at VeloCity. I don't know if anyone in the room has ever been to a VeloCity conference or has had that opportunity. Actually part of a team that's leading an effort to bring it to Canada in the next few years, so stay tuned for that. But it was a similar opportunity for me to meet with the Dutch and the Danes and see what my European colleagues are doing. And by the way, Mayor's still here, bravo, and great opening remarks, by the way. As a recovering politician myself, I can say that. Maybe I'm not supposed to say that, but all politics is local, and you're doing a great job. But I feel the same way. When I go to the European Cycling Federation conference and meet countries and people who are doing really big things, it can be inspiring, but also a little bit deflating. Because you think, oh my goodness, how is it that we can't somehow find the political will to muster the ability to take all of the members of our society, including the millions of people who are cycling daily, and mobilize them so that we have a different conversation about cycling. And I'm maybe going to close with a hopeful reflection, but start with one that feels a little less hopeful. We're an increasingly polarized society. And just listening to the news this morning, raise your hand if you don't want to turn the news on. Good grief. You know, you're constantly reminded of the polarization, what we see in Ontario. And this is not about the fact that our government was defeated by the current one. It's more about a lament of how cycling has become polarized, unnecessarily politicized, and people's lives should never, ever be put at risk by polarization and politicization of issues that so many of us care about and so much of society cares about, especially when cycling brings such tremendous benefits to our society, be it health, be it economics, Mary, you touched on it, tourism, the whole 9 yards. So there's a lot to do. There's a lot in front of us that's going to require a sophisticated, well-organized, and well-resourced coalition of support. And so I admire what the BC Cycling Coalition is doing. I'm here to help in any way that I can, not just today, Peter, but beyond, if that's helpful. And if there's anything, as I say, that we are doing, you know, just know, all of you, that we're not alone, okay? We're not alone. Everyone in this room, Peter, and, you know, the members of your board, the people that are here, these are people that care about the work that you're doing. I heard it last night. I see it already in the room here today. And I think, you know, there's bright days ahead. The task we have in front of us. I want to honor something that Bonnie, who spoke so eloquently again this morning, said last night in her talk about don't be afraid to make mistakes, because making mistakes is how we learn. I checked with her this morning. I said, maybe that's not exactly what you said, Bonnie, so I hope that my interpretation was correct. But that was a humbling reminder that we can't let perfect be the enemy of the good. And that we're going to make mistakes along the way, but that's how we learn. And we're in this together, so thank you. I just wanted to do a measure of the room and sort of raise hands here. So how many engineers in the room? We love our engineers. Bravo. Thank you for what you do. Planners? Rock stars. Engineers too. How many advocates in the room? Terrific. And that same group of people, I think, are part of the non-for-profit sector. But if yes, okay, non-for-profit leadership, yep. Raise your hand. Wonderful. Thank you. So this is for all of you. So I'm hoping that it helps and it's inspiring, because that's the goal. I'm smiling because my 99-year-old mother, who's robust and well, by the way, constantly reminds me, and as the youngest of 7 kids, I was born talking. So for me to ask a room full of people whether or not they can hear me, I'm going to be sure to tell Mom that can say it. So here we go. This is a picture of my husband. I like to start with this because it reminds me of why I'm here, and that's a very much younger me, by the way. There's Greg looking handsome in his uniform. Sorry, I got a little bit too aggressive there with the clicker. So I split this presentation in modules of progress, and I'm an inveterate optimist, so I like to talk about progress because there's lots of opportunity to talk about what's going wrong. And we are going to touch on a little bit of that today, but I hope is important. Optimism is important, and staying positive as much as we can, also very important. So I'm sorry, everyone. I seem to be hitting this and having an advance more quickly than I'd like. Here we go. So this is on our website. I'm not going to perseverate on it, but much like the BC Cycling Coalition, we're a province-wide policy and advocacy organization that brings together people who share our vision for a more bicycle-friendly province and our vision and our mission. I'll just touch briefly on the bottom 3, and you'll see them in a moment, and here you are. Sorry for the word salad. Don't be overwhelmed by the words on this slide. The key takeaway, I hope, is that we have a 3-legged stool, which is our strategic plan. It's as a non-for-profit organization, and I know all of you in the room who lead them understand this. It's important to have a strategic plan. It allows you to have a discipline, but it also allows you to say, gosh, we'd love to do that, but we can't. We're constrained by our resources, but this is our mission and our vision. And our organization focuses on 3 broad things: advocacy, building capacity in the non-for-profit sector and in the municipal sector, because Mayor, in our province, you know, and I'm sure it's the same here. I know it is from talking to Peter, mayors, councillors, there's a
pent-up demand for knowledge about how municipalities can become more bicycle-friendly. And our organization works at that diligently. And mobilizing for change. I'm going to talk about this later, but our work is really about change management. Over a dozen years or so, we had some fairly significant milestones. I'll share those. When my husband was killed in 2006, I started really having conversations around Ontario and across the country. I came to BC. I met with some folks from the BC Cycling Coalition all those years ago, Peter, to have conversations about what they were doing. Our colleagues in Bella, Quebec. There's 3 provincial cycling organizations in Canada, yours here, ours in Ontario, and Quebec that have full-time staff and have a paid organization that works and mobilizes. So getting out and talking to people, was really important. That environmental scan work carried into the United States. It was a different time. And our colleagues in the US and the League of American Bicyclists in Washington have built an organization where they lobby Congress. They have a very robust cycling caucus that has hundreds of members, and they do a first-class job of advocacy and capacity building in the United States, and I admire them. So I went to their conference, I've spoken at their conference, and then I started really traveling to Europe and going to the fellow city conferences, for example, and really listening to people. My community is twinned with Apeldoorn in Holland. Holland, of course, the Netherlands being a very cycling-friendly country, where they have really figured it out. And so I took all that information back. I'll tell you a quick story from my conversation with the mayor of Apeldoorn in 2007. We were at the closing banquet, and he said, "What can we do for cycling?" And I said, "Well, Mayor, I've been here for 2 weeks. I cycled in this Nirvana-like atmosphere. It's really quite incredible. Can you tell me the top 3 things that you would say have made you the cycling country and culture that you are?" He said, "Oh, it's really simple, Eleanor. We made it easy and safe and convenient, and because we're Dutch, cheap." It's like the Dutch people are really cheap, to ride a bicycle. And we made it really challenging, much more challenging and complicated to take your car. I said, well then, okay. That's a simple menu, that shouldn't be too difficult, but you can see what they did, and they were inspired and motivated by the same things that inspire and motivate us. We started really our advocacy and campaigning work in 2008 after we launched our organization in 2007. We started doing public polling. There was a mayor of Toronto at the time, bless his soul, who said, "There's a war on the car." And my political background, I worked for 2 prime ministers at the start of my career, and I knew that didn't ring true to me. I thought, that's just not true. And so we raised some money, and we hired a public pollster, and we started doing polling, and shockingly, but not surprisingly, absolutely false. There's no war on the car, first of all. It's a false narrative. It continues to be a false narrative. And not surprisingly, 87% of Ontarians are cyclists and motorists. Hello, we're multimodal people. Every day starts with a walk. Sometimes it's a car, sometimes it's your bicycle, sometimes it's transit. But we're not, one versus the other. This is about us. This is not you versus me. This is us. And so when you do polling, that demonstrates that people are making a daily choice, and that sometimes they choose one thing or the other, but they are not exclusively one or the other. So enough already of the polarization. That's been really helpful to us. In 2008, I proposed changes to the Highway Traffic Act in Ontario, inspired by my husband. We call it Greg's Law, and it's increased penalties for people who drive under suspension. Given the convictions that the guy who killed my husband had, it seemed only right that we passed legislation. So I went to the commissioner of the OPP. I said, I want to do this. He said, I'm in. And so together we did it, and Greg's Law was passed. That was our first legislative change in 2009. And that same year, we started having a bike summit, just like you're having, an active transportation summit to bring together politicians and what I like to call the usual suspects. Everybody who's here, public health are here too, by the way. All the people in the community who care about safe, active communities, bringing them together, and it was in one room. Ironically, it was in Vancouver where the CAA invited me to speak at a conference they were having on cycling. Now, you may say, Canadian Automobile Association, I know the BCAA, I believe that they are also active in cycling in some respect. But CAA approached me and said, would you do this? And then I approached them and said, we should be dating, really. We should. And why? Because they did some polling. 60% of their members are cyclists on a regular basis, and the light went on. And they said there's a business opportunity here. They're a private sector, they're a non-profit, but they actually care about serving their members. And they realized that they had a safety and advocacy imperative in front of them, because that's what they do as well. And they realized it's cycling tourism, because they're a tourism company, they're also an insurance company. So things started to add up for CAA in really interesting ways, and they've been our partner ever since. They fund our work. They come to us when we meet ministers, and we have conversations at the Ontario Legislature. They're a phenomenal partner. So we're very fortunate to have them. I went to my first Mellow City conference in 2009. That was a bit of a game changer. At our conference in 2009, our first Ontario Bike Summit, every time we do one of these events, we use it to convene and consult. And so at that first conference, we asked people, we want to design a new cycling strategy for Ontario. What would you say we need to include in that document and in that process? And so we got a phenomenal response from everybody at the conference. We then did a bunch of polling, we worked with other stakeholders, and in 2010, we launched the first Ontario cycling strategy draft in 20 years, and I presented it to the Minister of Transportation, who immediately took it to a deputy and got to work. So that really started 3 years of fairly consistent work on our end to make sure that that policy was actualized, and I'll talk about that in a moment. The Bicycle for the Communities program we brought to Ontario from the United States as a way to honor progress. I keep looking at the mayor, but it's true. I mean, mayors are chief bragging officers, right? You are the chief bragging officer of Kingston, and you do a great job. And that's part of your job, isn't it? That's a great part of your job. So given that mayors are chief bragging officers and everybody likes a little healthy competition, why not institute a program that honors the progress, but also gives you a menu of opportunity to pursue for making yourself better. Better is always possible. We're all wanting to do that. That's what the BSC program does. And it's worked really well for us. In 2012, a group of us went to the Ontario corner and said too many people are dying in Ontario on their bike, and so he agreed to issue a study and a look at the 126 people who died in Ontario between 2006 and 12. My husband was one of them, and invited me to sit on the review. There were about 12 organizations that sat on the review. We were the only NGO there. And really a coalition of partners looking about how to make Ontario more safe, 14 recommendations that we then started to make part of our strategic plan in terms of pursuing the gaps in the society that we have and that we're outlining in the review. One of the most important things that I wanted to see happen was that cycling strategy for the province. I was really adamant about that and clear that we needed this, and it was one of the recommendations. And it's what drove the public policy change the following year when the Cycle-On strategy was launched in 2013 with a new Minister of Transportation who invited me to help lead the consultations that led to the final strategy. So this was across 12 ministries in the Ontario government. It wasn't just MTO or the Ministry of Transportation. It was 12 ministries in government. And it was a comprehensive look about how Ontario can address the burgeoning desire of Ontarians to cycle more often, and the work that municipalities were already doing to make their communities more bicycle friendly. So what followed was an election in 2014. At that time, I had left the organization, and the Premier asked me to run, and I was elected in Burlington, the first Liberal in 71 years in Burlington, not really a Liberal stronghold. And so I know there's not many Liberals in BC, but you get the picture. But for me, an important step forward, because the Premier invited me to come into government and take my road safety work into government and bring all of that work. And it has inspired me ever since, but it certainly inspired my public service. In 2015, we passed the 1 meter safe passing law that we'd advocated for when I was outside of politics, but it was a pleasure to be a legislator and pass that. One of the few provinces that have it. I think you have it as well here. New Brunswick has it. I think Quebec is on its way. Nova Scotia was the first in Canada. So important legislation. The Premier then asked me into cabinet and gave me the cycling file. Yay. So myself and the Minister of Transportation took that cycling strategy and began to chip away at the recommendations of the cycling strategy, and one of those was to invest in infrastructure. So municipalities were hankering for investments by the province to help them shoulder the burden of those investments, and so we announced $125 million in cycling infrastructure funding. A little side note, the current premier has decided to rip up some bike lanes, and you've heard about that. It's taken me this long to just mention it, actually. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. But that was my announcement, by the way, when I was minister, so it's, take that one a little personally, but it is what it is. We made that funding announcement at the response of municipalities who were telling us, you know, there's more and more people cycling in Ontario. In fact, today, there are about 3.2 million people in Ontario, or 22% of people, that ride their bike regularly, at least weekly, some of them daily. So with that many people on their bikes now, and cycling's not going away, thank goodness, and more people wanting to ride, what's the number one reason people don't ride? They don't feel safe, right? What's going to make them feel safe? Infrastructure investments. Winner, chicken dinner. This is not complicated. And so the announcements that we made, spurred on and supported by the municipal sector, were significant. And then before we lost government in 2018, I was able to table an important piece of legislation, the third one inspired by the loss of my husband, and that was creating vulnerable road user penalties in the Highway Traffic Act in Ontario and passing amendments. They're the strongest in Canada, proud to say. And new charges, careless driving caused death and careless driving caused bodily harm. The man that killed my husband was charged with careless. He got a year suspension of his license and a further, I can't even remember. It was egregious. I'm not a vengeful person. I wanted to take the energy that I had and channel it into something positive, but it was shocking to see that for taking a life, this is what he got, and I know that so many people who've been in my situation, who've lost loved ones, feel the same. So that's the inspiration. So having the opportunity to amend the Highway Traffic Act and close those gaps in the legislation that we had was very rewarding. I just want to talk now about what happened next. So the next series of our work in Ontario has really been since the new provincial government came in. And you may say, oh gosh, things ground to a halt. Well, they sort of did. The current government had a different way of thinking about cycling that's not as robust and profound as the way that we did it. And you would say that most cycling programs and partnerships were shelved. The increased partisanship was challenging for all of us. It remains challenging. Our cycling caucus struggled. In the dissertation of things that we achieved, I neglected to mention an important point, which is in 2012, I was in the UK, and I was invited to attend a group of national organizations at the Houses of Westminster in London in advance of the London Olympics, because the City of London and the entire country really had embraced cycling in a really important way. And so I got to meet with all my colleagues from the UK who do this work, and there were politicians there, members of parliament, and they had something called the All-Party Cycling Caucus. And I thought, oh gosh, that's great. R&D, rip off and duplicate, yes. So I said, I'm bringing this back to Ontario, and we did. And so now we have a caucus of interest across the aisle to ensure that cycling remains nonpartisan, that we focus on what we have in common: road safety, saving people's lives, and leveraging cycling to the best of our ability, ensuring that tourism supports are robust. All of these things are embodied by our All-Party Cycling Caucus. We're meeting, I met with them over the summer, and we're meeting again on an advocacy webinar with our folks from across Ontario to talk about setting the stage for the upcoming legislative session. So it's a construct that works really well for us, and it helps keep cycling on the front burner, and it mobilizes some really important friends. So during this time, though, during the 2018 to 20 period, certainly the COVID crisis was hard on non-for-profits, but along came the federal government, and the federal minister asked me to help develop a national fund that they launched in 2021. I don't know if you benefited from any of that funding, Mayor, but the federal government announced $400 million in cycling and active transport funding in 2021, and then again, another $500,000 this year. So that's a pretty robust amount. It's part of the permanent transit funding, and it's available to municipalities across the country. The legislation that allows the provincial government to get rid of some of the bike lane infrastructure, the government was sued. It's currently under appeal. I would wager that the Premier will use the notwithstanding clause. He's kind of backed himself into a corner, and he's pretty clear that he wants to be able to remove those bike lanes because he sees them as egregious. So, not a happy tale, but nonetheless, the next slide or two talks about work that we continue to do. Because the growth in pent-up demand for knowledge, and because the growth in cycling is clear and robust, our work as an organization needs to continue, and we have a lot of support for that work to continue. When we lost a lot of money over the COVID years because we do get money from our events, that was a challenge for us, like so many of our colleagues across the country. We struggled, but the core programs continued, and we began to rebuild as the pandemic ended, and really wanting to begin to address the increasingly partisan environment that Ontario finds itself in. So this just shows you the word salad again, but it also highlights, I think, the work that we're doing and that lies ahead, that we continue to do despite the challenging environment that we find ourselves in the province. And there's a vast array there, but let me address some of those sort of individually now. Under the advocacy umbrella, oops, this is a little bit, sorry everybody, it keeps springing ahead for me here. Let me go. Okay, so I mentioned the All-Party Cycling Caucus. Oops, sorry, I'm not even pressing it. Okay, I mentioned earlier that we have an advocacy webinar with our coalition of support from across the province. This is an opportunity for us to really work with our advocacy community. One of the things that we have observed amongst the advocacy community is a sort of a gap in terms of knowledge and understanding. We want to help support advocacy because all politics is local, and we want advocates to feel inspired and empowered and informed. I'll say this, when I started this work, I joined the cycling committee at my local city council because I wanted to understand how decisions were made and how it worked. So as I was building my own not-for-profit, I really wanted to understand how community development works in a local municipality. And one of the things that emerged from that, and continues to be a big gap for us in Ontario anyway, is that there's so many people that are so well-intentioned and they're so desirous of making change. And because this work is hard, it sometimes leaves people feeling frustrated, and it's only human that when you're frustrated, you're not at your best self, and so that best self doesn't always emerge. And so for us, it's an opportunity to say, I get it, this work is hard and frustrating. Save your frustration for your friends and your family, but when you're doing this work, try to be positive and professional. And as I've often said, to so many advocates, do you like it when someone pokes in the eye and punches you in the nose? No. No, nobody likes that. Our job is to offer support to city staff and to city officials because they live there too, and they want to make a difference too. So, yeah, it's human to be frustrated, but try to keep that frustration at bay because governments need good partners to work, and they need actualized citizens who are, going to disagree with them, but let's disagree without being disagreeable. So there's an opportunity for us to really educate and inform, and our work at the coalition is really about that. And so when we think about the upcoming session, we've got a paved shoulder private members bill that we're looking to table with members of the all-party caucus. And we are going to mobilize. We've already had a meeting and a strategy discussion about mobilizing the agriculture community, the trucking community, because who cares about paved shoulders? Trucks do. Truck drivers do. The trucking industry does. The agriculture sector in Ontario cares about paved shoulders. Are they more expensive? Yes. But over the life cycle of the road, think of your driveway. Would you put gravel in your driveway? No. It gets displaced, and it's costly. So there's work that we're doing and will do to create a pan-partisan win in the legislature and table this legislation. It could be a game changer for, say it with me, cycling tourism, right? And safety, and making cycling more comfortable and more accessible in our communities, especially our rural communities across the province. We have a Queen's Park Lobby Day where we spend the day at the legislature with provincial politicians. We bring mayors to that table. And the reason we do that is because they're the ones who are clamoring for more support and more funding, and they are the ones who have a representative agency that can say to ministers, you know, just like you do at the Union of BC Municipalities, and we do at AMO, which is our equivalent, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, where we have a presence every year. We want to be there, we want our mayors to come, and so we have meetings with ministers, and we have a reception where we bring cyclists from across the province to meet with their representatives, and it gives people a sense of who's out there and what's happening. I just want to talk quickly about our bike-friendly community program. I mentioned it earlier. It's that holistic assessment. It provides the awards, the rewards to municipalities for their progress. We have an award ceremony at our bike summit, and we honor the progress. Sometimes we've gone to city's council and presented the award locally, which is really kind of nice as well. We have a workshop that we do as part of our summit to inspire and inform. And starting this year, we're going to start charging for the program. We put a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of intellectual capital into this, and we provide municipalities with a menu. I think there's various consulting firms in the room. Urban Systems, I think, WSP is here. When they go into a municipality, they charge a reasonable sum for spending the day with municipal staff and giving them advice. This is not far off that, actually, because the people that adjudicate our applications are planners and engineers and really clever people. So we want to start charging municipalities. We've consulted them. They've said yes, and it's going to give us a stream of income as well and help us to hire more staff. And that's important to our little non-for-profit that likes to do big things. So the benefits of the program, I think, are pretty clear. That bragging right piece, the revenue stream for us is pretty important. The advocacy platform that it gives to mayors and councillors to talk about their work and their desire to be more bicycle friendly. It also attracts jobs and investment because it says from a municipality to pretty much everybody, we care about safety, we care about healthy, safe, and active communities here, and that attracts jobs and investment because doctors want to come to a place where there are safe, active places to be and to live and to raise a family, and so on and so forth. And we do workshops, again, that we charge for because we bring in experts, and that's a cost at municipalities. We have a health partners advocacy campaign that we're mobilizing. So it makes sense to all of you that emergency room physicians care about injury prevention, and if we start taking away bike lanes, God forbid, but in the interim, if we start to want to focus on the positive benefits that cycling infrastructure can bring, if you're dealing with a government like we are that is not benign towards cycling, and a premier who likes to use his platform in ways that aren't necessarily helpful, it helps to have other people who are influential to talk loudly and appropriately about the benefits that cycling can bring. Physicians are a group of people that the government listens to. And so we are mobilizing a group of ER docs to really advocate and lobby the provincial government to make sure that they make the requisite investments and keep focusing on cycling and all of its benefits. I want to spend 30 seconds on this next piece. I mentioned that I'm privileged to have this network of cycling colleagues in other countries. Last fall, I visited the UK to spend some time with my colleagues at Transport for London and the London Cycling Campaign, and they are doing some phenomenally innovative but actually really quite geniusly simple things in London to save lives. They have a mayor who's advocated for something called the direct vision standard. I'll talk about this in a moment. There's a group of us in Canada that are mobilizing to work with the big city mayors to make this the reality in Canada. The Mayor of London has singularly changed the way trucks are manufactured and made. I'll show you a picture in a moment that illustrates that, but he just kind of got sick and tired of cyclists and pedestrians being killed by trucks. You know, it's not a purposeful, it's a terrible accident. And those of you that have been to London, anyone been to London? I rode my bike there, yeah, you've been, lots of people, right? So I was there last October, I rode my bike. I actually felt pretty safe. I was with friends, so I knew what I was doing, but it's not the easiest place to ride your bike, but they have made it much safer by really taking the bad actors off the road and encouraging the industry to manufacture to a different standard. So it's been quite remarkable what they've done. This clock system we're looking to pilot in Ontario. We're meeting with construction industry and transit project leaders, the folks at Metrolinx, and so on, to think about how can we make construction sites more safe. The Brits have done a brilliant job. It's really quite simple. You go to a construction site. I know I did it when I was there last October. You meet people that are at the entrance, and they literally are just human-focused, monitoring the trucks that go in and out and making sure that they're safe and making sure that there's no cyclists and pedestrians in the way, and it's really dramatically reduced the number of fatalities around major construction sites. Toronto in particular lives in a constant state of construction, and this is really critical. So this is the conversation we're having. And then the fleet operator recognition scheme, I won't elaborate on that here, but it's an opportunity to really industry-driven. The truck industry in the UK got tired of all the fatalities, and no one likes to see that, least of all them. And so they committed to making a difference, and they've done that. And all of these things are industry-driven, which are really interesting. Sometimes government can intervene and say, you shall, and sometimes that's necessary. This particular endeavor is really, inspired by them, so it's been really interesting to see it. I just want to quickly show you what the direct vision standard means. And you can look this up online yourself, but it's been a phased-in approach. It's now becoming the European standard. The Eurocity Secretary General has embraced it. A number of countries in Europe are moving in this direction, inspired by what the City of London and now Great Britain are doing. This will show you, sorry everyone, it's like I'm leaning too hard here. This will show you, see the difference? The bottom picture is what we have now and what is no longer acceptable in London. And the top picture shows you that new direct vision standard. For me, the first picture on the left at the top is really illustrative. It's almost like a city bus. It gives drivers that clean line of sight and that clear line of sight, in addition to a number of other things that they're required to do on their trucks now. But this is phenomenal. And it's saving lives. They've already seen a 22% reduction in fatalities and serious injuries as a consequence of this, and I think that's just only going to excel. So it's inspiring what they've done, and we want to bring this here. So I won't perseverate on that. I actually took this picture when I was in London last fall, but you can see how much better it is already, and it's really, really going to be game-changing. So we've started the journey to talk to the federal minister about this, because trucks are regulated in Canada at the federal level, right? So this is going to require federal change and federal embrace, and so we've started that work, and we're continuing to talk with the large urban mayors. Hey, the Minister of Infrastructure is a former mayor of Vancouver. So we've already got someone who's built in, and I knew him when I was Minister of Culture, so I haven't been shy. I have a meeting with him in a couple of weeks. So, and you know what I'm going to be talking to him about already, right? I'll let you know how I do. So there you go. Building capacity, one of our other pillars, we have the Ontario Cycling Advocacy Network. It's a fun acronym that we use to really do our mobilization work. I mentioned this earlier, really starting to move in this direction. Ontario Cycling is the athletic side of the ledger in Ontario. So they are what's called a provincial sport organization. I know you have one here in BC. And their mandate is the athletic side of cycling. And they approached us to really have a conversation about advocacy and training and making their clubs better. And so we signed an MOU with them, and we're beginning to do some work together. We're designing a pledge that their cyclists are going to be very public about, and their commitment to safety to reinforce the importance of sharing the road. And since 87% of people are motorists and cyclists, it's their opportunity, and they have really driven this to say, as cyclists, we are motorists too. We care about safety. We care about sharing the road, and this is really important. So it's a bit of an ISO designation, but it's a way to brand and market what we know is happening already, which is people who care about road safety. So for us, this allows us to bust some of the myths that are out there about how cyclists are scofflaw and this and that and the other. I hear it so often. let's talk about what's really going on and shine a light on all of the people across our province who are riding their bikes every day and doing so in safety. You know, something I'll just share quickly that confounds me, and maybe it does you too, is I really don't understand why cyclists bear the lion's share of the blame. As though somehow we aren't out there every day wanting the road to be safer. As though somehow we want to get in the way of cars. As though somehow we want to block traffic. As though somehow we are the cause of congestion. All of which is false. And yet we are made to wear this label. This is going to help counteract that. And it's going to be an exciting opportunity for us to really break through some of the narrative that is pervasive. So when we talk about mobilizing for change, this is really what we're about. And I've talked a lot about leaning into your friends and building those coalitions. We're a charity, so we hold a big ride that's our fundraiser every year. We've been doing that since we lost my husband 20 years ago. We launched an advertising campaign around the 1 meter law with the commissioner of the OPP, who's a big cyclist. And my husband was an OPP officer, so as part of the police family, it's been my privilege to work with them since the beginning, and they've helped me with legislation, and they've been our supporters from day one. So having Tom, who's obviously a leader in law enforcement in Canada, step forward and say, I'm going to do an ad that talks about the importance of, you know, and the imperative of what you do as a motorist out there, and how there are laws and you need to obey them. So that's been an important step forward for us. And I mentioned that we do polling. We continue to do this because what gets measured gets managed, and it's important for us to be evidence-based. We're excited, and I was talking to Rose about this last night. We're inspired by our colleagues in the UK. By the way, I just want to give a shout out to Rose and Hub for doing amazing work in Vancouver, Eleanor, mainland. Bravo to you. Bravo. Always admired Hub from day one. But the Bikeability program that inspired them too, and they've been doing this for years as well, has really been our inspiration to bring cycling skills education to Ontario in a comprehensive way, and notably to create provincial standards for cycling skills education. This is going to be a game changer intergenerationally, and we have funding from the Canada Games Legacy Fund. I announced the Games when I was minister. I sat on the board of the Canada Games in 2022 and kind of made it my mission to ensure that one of the legacy projects was focused on cycling. So this is where we're headed. It's very exciting for us as a province, and we hope to be able to share with all of you where we're at as that goes forward. And thanks to our friends from Hub who've already offered, and have taken me up on that road, to help us as we move this forward, because there's learnings here in Canada that we can leverage too. So we're excited. So I'm going to close with something that Peter kind of asked me to do and think about, which is to share some of the learnings along the way. So I hope this measures up, Peter. It's like the David Letterman top 10. Okay? I know, cultural reference that makes me old, right? I know. All the young people are going, who's David Letterman? Yeah, David Letterman. Top 10, here we go. So in the process of doing this work, feed yourself. Feed yourself. Don't forget about yourself. And I say that to people who head organizations, but also to the organizations in general. Having money to do this work is critical. Is it easy to do? No. Our organization struggles with it too. But our board of directors has made a conscious effort to focus on ensuring that our organization is sustainable so that we can do the work that we know needs doing. And engaging our partners and writing grants, and raise your hand if you're in the not-for-profit sector and you write grants all the time, yes. And getting government funding, yes, but private sector partnerships, sponsorships, really important. Feed yourself. While you inspire, don't forget about your foundation. Invest in fundraising capacity in your organization. Do it. I know it feels like a mountain to you right now, because everyone is reticent about raising money, but it's the practical thing. And you know the number one, I learned this when I was a vice president at United Way, you know the number one reason people don't give? No one asks them. That's proven in studies, by the way. People don't give because no one asks them. Be fearless. Ask, what's the worst thing that can happen? They say no, and you're on to the next. You don't have to waste any more time on that. situation, you're moving on to the next. So, consult your network, build your plan, fundraise against it, nurture your volunteers, but ask for help. Don't try and do it by yourself. And the good news is you don't have to. Look at everybody in this room, Peter. Look at all these people who are here to help move this forward. And R&D is a big one. Rip off and duplicate. That's what today's about. If there's something here that you think is going to work for you, please, 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 the greatest flattery in the world is that someone emulates what you're doing. I skipped through to number 7. Build it so they'll come. So build your base. We've already got a coalition of citizens and partners and coalitions that wanted to help you. Consult and convene every step of the way. Ask people their opinion, invite them to weigh in. There's nothing better than that, and there's tremendous power in that. When I go to see a minister at Queen's Park, I'm able to say, we have 5,000 people we work with across Ontario that are part of our network. We have municipalities, we're consulting them. There's nothing better than that relevance, and you already have that. You already have that. That exists already. Leverage it. It's very, very powerful. And by the way, don't, this is the be positive thing, right? Share your successes. Don't hide your light under a bushel. When you do something and it's worked, share it. Take a moment to reflect on your accomplishments and share it with everyone so they get inspired by it too. Because how else do you manage the negative Nellies? And say it with me there, banana. Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. Banana. The banana people. The mayor's smiling, he knows what I mean. But those people exist, so we need to balance those negative Nellies. Build it so they'll come. Second part of this, facts and data are king. It gives you confidence, it gives you ammunition, it gives you that ability to articulate your message with strength and conviction and build your brand with confidence. So governments want good partners. I said that earlier. It's so important. The provincial government, the federal government, the municipal government, they need good people to help them do this work. You are those people, by the way, don't be shy about that. Stay positive. I said this earlier. It's really hard. This work is hard. And it's especially difficult on the tough days when you feel like the world is conspiring against you, and I have those often. So, and that's when I call my girlfriends, and I might have a glass of wine on occasion just to vent. But vent to your friends, but be kind to yourself at the same time. And a big part of our job is convincing people. So showing up to sell your idea in an approachable way draws people to you. People want to be part of what you're doing and the work that you're actualizing if you present it in a positive way. It's so important. I can't say that enough. Think, by the way, everyone knows what BHAG is. Big, hairy, audacious goal, right? Shoot for the moon, land amongst the stars. I could say this in so many ways, but think big. Don't think small. Think big. Have big ambitions. Start small. Pilots are really important. You know who taught me about the benefit of pilots? Jeanette Sodicon? Most of the people in this room know Jeanette. She was the Commissioner of Transportation in New York City. I happened to sit across from her at dinner in Copenhagen at the Velocity Conference in 2010. We've stayed friends. She's a remarkable person. And a Republican mayor, the old Republican Party, redesigned New York City and changed it forever. Closed Times Square, bike lanes everywhere, protected infrastructure, and Jeanette led that as his Commissioner of Transportation. So she said, Eleanor, it's just all about the narrative and changing the narrative. And those words have stayed with me today. But think big. Don't think small. Think big. Start small, but think big. And I mentioned, that our work is challenging, but it's also complex. So give yourself a break. All good organizations, including the BCC, have a strategic plan. It is your North Star. It is what you sell to funders. It is how you talk about the work that you do. Most of those are a 3 to 5 year arc for a reason, because this work is about change management and it doesn't happen overnight. So give yourself the breathing space to realize that you're on a journey that's going to take you a little while to accomplish. That said, build in opportunities for small wins along the way so you continue to feel inspired, because that's important too. And I mentioned this earlier, don't forget to pause and reflect on your accomplishments. And finally, be proactive as much as you can, but be ready to pivot If something comes in the door that needs your attention, and you're able to respond accordingly, and of course, reacting with professionalism is really important too. Here's a truism, I think. Everyone wants transformation, but virtually nobody likes change. Right? And our work is change. It is. It may not be for us, but it is for a lot of people. The work that we want to do comes up against resistance in a lot of ways because people don't like it, but also because people don't like change, and it feels like it's going to hit them in a way that's going to change their lives, change their journeys, change. People don't like it. So it's tough. However, we have assets that we need to leverage, and I mentioned earlier our polling numbers in Ontario, 22% of people. Mobilizing those people, inspiring them to believe in your vision and empowering them to join you along the journey, really important, because as Calvin Coolidge said, nothing in the world takes the place of persistence. This is hard work, and it doesn't happen overnight, but hopefully what I've shared today and what you're seeing here in BC and your colleagues are doing is evidence of the fact that people want us to do this work, and it's really important that we do it. It's important for democracy, it's important for human rights, it's important. Almost there. Approach problems by thinking win-win. Finding common ground. I know this sounds like Captain Obvious, right? But nonetheless, when you go into a meeting, especially with a politician or somebody that you feel is maybe not going to agree with you, there's common ground to be found. Everywhere, somewhere, there's a nugget, commonality between you and that person, and that's where the relationship starts. You build from there, you develop a relationship, you start the journey together, and you build it. Because politicians are people too. They really are. They're thinking, feeling human beings who care, maybe differently than you do, but listening and learning, disagree without being disagreeable. Find that common ground and build on it. It really, really exists. And the BCCC represents those voices, and there's tremendous power in that. And that bolsters political will. I saw those 2 ministerial videos there. I did tons of those in my time, by the way. So I've been in that video. But you got 2 ministers there who've made some commitments. I've been knocking on their door saying, thanks, where do we go now? Right? Thank you for your words at the summit, Minister. Really appreciate that. I know you meant them. Let's build on this together, and how can we help? How can we help, right? So build on that. And those champions that you have, like the mayor here, they are your people. Find them, elevate them, support them, not just at election time, but in between election time. Encourage their work, bolster their efforts, give them kudos. Lots of ways to be negative Nellies about this work. Don't be a negative Nellie, be a positive Patty, okay? Support the people that are doing the work that you care about and shine a light on them, because foundational to leading the change that we want is to harness the desire of people to make a positive difference. They are your people. Harness them because they exist. Find them, work with them, support them, shine a light on them. And in the tough days, make sure you're there for them too. This is a truism that I really believe in, and I learned early in politics, but that I practiced when I was a politician. Work across the aisle. Work across the aisle. When the lights would go out after question period and opposition members would come over, my staff would say, oh, Minister, I'd say, no. Our job is to serve the people of Ontario. We may think differently than we do, but we're going to find a way to work together. That's what we do. That's it. Why else are people in politics have to help other people? It's the only reason. In my view, it's a personal reflection that you get into politics. Work across the aisle. Cycling should never, ever be politicized. Don't fall into the trap of people who want to take you there because they want to practice oppositional politics and they want to create an enemy because they have articulated their ground as being here and they want to target to shoot at, and that's you. Don't be that. Show up and be positive, friendly, and proactive. Bring your A game, come with data, show up. But don't show up to have a partisan conversation. Don't get dragged into those debates. It doesn't serve the work that we're doing, and it just serves to increase polarization, which already exists, and none of us want more of that. So resist the attempt, because I worked for Prime Minister Chrétien, who apart from I was his press secretary, you can imagine. And apart from anything else, he had this great saying that when you point a finger at someone, 3 are pointing back at you. Finger pointing is absolutely not progress. And it is absolutely not about solutions. It's about distracting and, moving the dialogue around in a different way. But increased politicization is central to the straw man. I include this slide because I've done it before. I think most of you know what a straw man is, but when the premier of our province says bike lanes cause congestion, and I was re-elected to get rid of bike lanes and solve the congestion problem, that's a straw man. Yeah, and he has created of cyclists the other to distract from the relevant arguments in different contexts. He doesn't want to talk about solutions. He wants to make cyclists bad, car drivers good, because that suits his vision. And because he polls almost every day, he's convinced that he's on the right side of the equation. And this fall, we're going to start to campaign and say, you are dead wrong. You are absolutely wrong. The majority of Ontarians are not with you, Premier. And you're barking up the wrong tree. So wait for it, because that's where we're headed. And by the way, we're not going to do it in a confrontational manner. I have no interest in getting into a confrontation with anyone. I'm actually a conflict-averse person, which surprises people because I'm a passionate person, but I'm not interested in conflict. Conflict doesn't lead to solutions. And pointing fingers doesn't either. When people ask me if I miss politics, I say I miss helping people and having my hands on the wheel and doing big things. I don't miss the politicization I saw every day. Don't miss that. Didn't like it. Don't like personal attacks. Didn't enjoy that. The other stuff is rewarding, so don't let the straw man win. So, gosh, I'm really going ahead, aren't I? Is someone trying to give me a message here? Hurry up. I'm right at the end. Build and foster champions work across the aisle. Like the straw man. Concluding thoughts. Bike clash is real. I was on a panel at the Bella City Conference with colleagues from London and Paris. Not the Netherlands, by the way, shockingly. A few colleagues from the United States, and we talked about how we are addressing, and we talked a little bit about this today, the bike clash, the backlash. So 2 strong areas of common grounds that are part of the political zeitgeist and politicians care about, and I think are rich ground for you to pursue provincially, because we're doing the same. And I think I share that by way of observation, because politicians care about affordability right now and convenience, and these are 2 things that are enhanced by more cycling more often, right? Affordability. We have a premier who says he cares about the little guy, affordability. Hello, cycling, hello? Yeah. Convenience, fastest way to get around? Sure. Right. And they don't cause congestion, by the way. Not one shred of evidence. And I've been doing this work for a long time. Anybody ever heard of a study that says the bike causes congestion? Honest to God, if someone has it, share it. I'd love to see it, because I've never seen it, in all the work that I've done. So, it's pretty clear. And when we ask people, would you vote for a politician who invests in cycling infrastructure? I love this one, because I share this all the time. 74% of people say, yeah, I'll vote for somebody who invests in cycling. That's a myth buster, right there. So there you go. The case for cycling support continues. Oops. This is really, okay. I get the message. Concluding thought, this is my last one. Our task is to change the narrative. And that's the path that we're on in Ontario. And I don't know if you're on that path here in BC, but I think you are. So our biggest asset is the people in our universe and in our network across Ontario, including mayors and thought leaders and planners and engineers, everybody who's here, a larger subset of you in Ontario. That's really it's a coalition of the willing who care deeply about this work and want to save lives. That's it. It's as straightforward as that. And I'm betting on us. Now, I am an inveterate optimist, as you can probably tell. But I really think that we have a big task in front of us, and I know we can do it. And Margaret Mead, of course, an inspiring quote to remind us that it's a small group of people just like this that's changing the world. All of you in your own way are changing the world when you get up every day And when the moments are tough, remind yourself of the work that you're doing because you're really making a difference. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.